imagine a language so precise
Hmm.
that it eliminates like ambiguity, a system where every philosophical truth, it flows inevitably from its premises.
Right.
That's the allure. And the challenge, I think, of classical logic
Yeah.
today, we're bringing a philosopher's lens, right,
Yeah.
to the Stanford Encyclopedia, philosophy's entry on classical logic,
Hmm.
and get ready to unpack its core components,
Right.
language, deduction, and semantics,
Yeah.
and really ponder its claim as the quote one right logic,
Hmm.
especially for someone like you immersed in the world of philosophical inquiry.
What's fascinating here is that classical logic isn't just this system of reasoning, right?
Yeah.
It's an attempt to create a language that mirrors the structure of our thoughts, but with like mathematical rigor.
Okay.
Think of it as a philosophical laboratory,
Ooh.
a controlled environment, right, where we can dissect arguments with surgical precision.
A
Yeah.
philosophical laboratory. I love that analogy. But why is this so crucial for a philosopher?
Right.
Isn't like natural language good enough?
Well, consider the ambiguities that plague philosophical discourse.
Yeah.
Terms can have multiple meanings. Sentences can be interpreted, in different ways.
Mm.
And hidden assumptions can kind of lurk beneath the surface.
Yeah, for sure.
Classical logic tries to eliminate that messiness by constructing a formal language where every symbol, every formula has a single, unambiguous interpretation.
So it's like creating a perfectly clear lens to examine the often blurry world of philosophical ideas.
Exactly.
Okay.
And to understand how this lens works, we need to start with its basic building blocks.
Yeah.
The article breaks it down beautifully, starting with individual constants and variables.
Okay, let's unpack this. Constants and variables. What exactly are we dealing with here?
Think of them as the names in our logic.
Okay.
Constants
All right.
are like proper names in natural language.
They refer to specific entities or concepts.
Mhm.
So Socrates, justice, the number two. These are all constants.
Yeah.
Variables, on the other hand, are placeholders, ready to be filled with more abstract ideas.
So if I'm arguing about the nature of knowledge, I might use a constant like justified true belief,
Right.
but also a variable to represent like different possible definitions of knowledge.
Precisely.
Okay.
Variables give us the flexibility to talk about general concepts without specifying their exact content.
Yeah.
And then we have predicates, which is where things start to get interesting.
Predicates, these are what connect our constants and variables.
Yes.
Yeah.
Predicates express relationships between entities or concepts. They're like the verbs or the relational phrases in our philosophical sentences.
Okay.
For example, like is a philosopher, is greater than, is a necessary condition for. These are all predicates.
So I could say like Socrates is a philosopher.
Right. Using the constant Socrates, the predicate is a philosopher.
Yeah.
And that captures a specific philosophical idea.
Exactly. And
Very good.
and by combining constants, variables, and predicates, we construct the sentences of our formal language formulas.
Okay.
These formulas are the heart of classical logic.
But what makes these formulas like so special? Aren't they just like symbolic representations of ordinary sentences?
Here's the key. Each formula in classical logic has a unique readability.
Okay.
There's no room for ambiguity or multiple interpretations. For a philosopher like you, right, constantly grappling with nuanced meanings, this is crucial.
Hold on. Unique readability. Can you give me an example of how this differs from natural language?
Sure. Take the sentence. All that glitters is not gold.
Okay.
In natural language, this could mean that not everything that glitters is gold, or it could mean that nothing that glitters is gold.
Right.
Two very different interpretations. In classical logic, we would use specific symbols and a precise syntax to construct a formula that captures only one of those meanings, eliminating any potential confusion.
That makes sense. It's like we're eliminating the noise of natural language to get at the pure logical structure of an argument.
Right.
So we've built this incredibly precise language.
Yeah.
But how do we actually use it to reason
Right.
to prove philosophical claims?
That's where the deductive system comes in.
Okay.
Engine of proof.
Okay.
It provides a set of rules that govern how we move from premises to conclusions in this formal language. Think of it as the rule book for playing the game of formal proofs.
Hey, a rule book for philosophical arguments. I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these rules.
The rules are fascinating in their own right.
Yeah.
We have rules for introducing and eliminating each logical symbol, guiding how we can combine and manipulate formulas to derive, new truths. There's weakening, which allows us to add premises to an argument without making it invalid.
Okay.
Think about how this applies to philosophical debates, where irrelevant premises can often derail a perfectly sound argument.
That happens all the time.
Right.
Someone throws in like a tangential point and suddenly the whole discussion goes off the rails.
Right, exactly.
So in classical logic, like adding more premises won't necessarily break the argument as long as the core logical structure remains valid.
Precisely.
Right.
It forces us to focus on the logical connections between statements rather than getting, bogged down in extraneous information.
That's a powerful tool for philosophical analysis.
Yeah.
What other intriguing rules does this system have?
Well, there's also a rule that often sparks heated debate even among logicians.
Okay.
It's a ex false quodly bet, meaning from falsehood, anything follows.
Wait, so if we start with a contradiction, we can conclude anything?
Yeah.
Doesn't that seem a bit extreme? Like, if I accidentally contradict myself in a philosophical argument, does that mean my opponent can just, like, declare victory and claim I've proven their point?
Well, it's certainly a controversial rule, but it highlights a fundamental principle of classical logic.
Okay.
Consistency is paramount.
Okay.
If a system contains a contradiction, it becomes trivial because any statement and its negation can be derived.
Right.
From a classical perspective, such a system loses its ability to distinguish between truth and falsehood.
So ex falso quodlibet is more of a warning sign than like a license to derive absurd conclusions.
Right.
It's telling us that contradictions are dangerous and can undermine the entire like logical framework of an argument.
Exactly. It forces us to be vigilant about maintaining consistency in our philosophical reasoning. And then we have the cut rule, which allows us to chain inferences together.
Okay, tell me more about this cut rule.
Yeah.
How does it help us like build philosophical arguments?
Imagine you've proven statement A,
Okay.
and from statement A you can deduce statement B. The cut rule allows you to eliminate statement A and directly infer statement B.
Okay.
It's like taking a shortcut through a chain of reasoning,
Right.
streamlining the argument.
So it helps us build complex arguments by linking together like smaller proven steps.
Right.
It's like constructing a philosophical edifice, brick by logical brick.
Precisely.
Okay, I like that.
But we've been talking about symbols and formulas as if they have meaning in themselves.
Yeah.
How do we actually ground them in philosophical reality? That's where semantics comes in.
All right.
We're now giving substance to our symbolic language,
Yeah.
defining what it means for a formula to be true within a given interpretation.
So we're finally connecting our abstract symbols to concrete philosophical ideas.
Right.
How does this work?
We start by defining a domain of discourse.
Okay.
The set of entities our language is talking about. It could be the set of all physical objects or all abstract concepts.
Right.
Or even just a small group of philosophers sitting in a room arguing about the meaning of life.
So like setting the stage for our philosophical drama.
Exactly.
We decide who the actors are and what kind of world they inhabit.
Exactly. And then we assign extensions to each term.
Okay.
This means we specify which individuals in our domain satisfy each predicate.
Okay.
For example, if our predicate is a philosopher,
Yeah.
we will list all the individuals in our domain who meet that criterion.
So if Socrates is in our domain of discourse and he's a philosopher,
Yeah.
we would include him in the extension of the predicate is a philosopher.
Precisely.
Yeah.
We're giving content to our abstract language by anchoring it to specific entities and their properties.
This is making a lot of sense.
Good.
We've got the symbols, the rules of deduction, and now the connection to actual meaning.
Yeah.
What happens next in this philosophical laboratory?
Now comes the really exciting part. We talk about satisfaction.
Okay.
A precise relationship between interpretations and formulas.
Mm-hmm.
We define when a formula comes out true based on a specific interpretation.
So we're finally seeing how our carefully constructed language actually relates to the truth of of philosophical claims.
Right.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Let's take the formula Socrates is a philosopher.
Okay.
This formula is satisfied or comes out true in any interpretation where the constant Socrates refers to the actual Socrates, and the predicate is a philosopher includes Socrates in its extension.
So we've created a system where the truth of a formula is determined by how its symbols are interpreted within a specific domain of discourse.
Exactly. And from here, we can explore the core concept of validity. An argument is valid if its conclusion is true in every interpretation where the premises are true. And this links back to the very heart of philosophical reasoning, sound, truth-preserving arguments.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
But it also raises a question. Does this formal notion of validity fully capture what W.E. as philosophers consider, a valid argument?
Right.
Are there nuances of philosophical reasoning that might escape like this formal system?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's precisely what we'll be tackling next as we delve into the meta-theory of classical logic and examine its limitations.
This is where things get really meta. We're going to climb the ladder of abstraction and examine the very logic of logic itself.
And who knows, maybe this exploration will challenge your own philosophical assumptions and lead to unexpected insights. That's the beauty of the deep dive.
All right, we've explored this intricate machinery of classical logic.
Yeah.
Its strengths, its completeness,
Right.
and even its surprising limitations.
Yeah.
But now the big question, is it truly the quote one right logic, the ultimate arbiter of philosophical reasoning?
Right.
As a philosopher myself, I have to admit, I'm a bit skeptical.
And you should be. As with any powerful tool, it's essential to understand both its capabilities and its limits.
Yeah.
The article does a great job laying out some compelling challenges to classical logic's claim to the throne.
One of the challenges that really struck me was the idea of expressive limitations.
Yeah.
Are there philosophical concepts that just can't be squeezed into this formal system?
Right.
Concepts that slip through the cracks of classical logic's precise language?
That's a crucial point. It turns out that key concepts like finitude and countability, notions that are central to many philosophical discussions, they can't be fully expressed in the language of first-order logic. For example, we can't write a first-order formula that captures the concept of there are finitely many objects.
So if I'm wrestling with a philosophical problem that involves these concepts,
right,
classical logic might not be the best tool for the job.
Yeah.
It might even lead me astray by oversimplifying the issue.
It certainly raises some red flags. It suggests that we need to be mindful of the expressive limits of our logical system and consider whether it's truly adequate for the philosophical task at hand. Classical logic might be a powerful tool for analyzing arguments about, say, the nature of knowledge or the existence of God, but it might struggle when it comes to questions about the nature of infinity or the foundations of mathematics.
It's like trying to build a house with only a hammer.
Right.
You might be able to get some things done,
Yeah.
but eventually you'll need more specialized tools.
Right.
The article goes on to discuss some of these alternative logics, like intuitionistic logic. What makes this system so different from classical logic?
Intuitionistic logic takes a different approach to truth and proof.
Okay.
It rejects the law of excluded middle, the idea that every proposition is either true or false.
Okay.
Instead, it focuses on constructive proofs where you have to actually demonstrate the existence of something rather than just arguing that it can't be false.
So it's a more show me the evidence kind of logic.
Right.
A logic that's grounded in what we can actually construct and verify.
Right.
That sounds appealing, especially in the context of philosophical inquiry, where we're often dealing with elusive concepts.
Exactly. Intuitionistic logic challenges us to rethink what it means for a proposition to be true. In this framework, truth is tied to the existence of a proof, a construction.
Yeah.
It's not simply a matter of something not being false. This shift in perspective has profound implications for how we approach philosophical arguments.
Intuitionistic logic almost sounds like a call for intellectual humility.
Right.
It's a reminder that we
Yeah.
should be wary of making grand pronouncements about truth
Yeah.
without having solid evidence or a clear method of construction.
That's a great insight. It highlights the philosophical motivations behind alternative logics. They often arise from a desire to address perceived limitations or shortcomings in classical logic,
Yeah.
and to offer a different perspective on the nature of truth, reasoning, and proof.
And there are even more alternatives out there.
Right.
The article mentions relevance logic and paraconsistency. These systems seem to tackle some of the more perplexing aspects of classical logic, like ex falso quod libet.
Yes, these logics challenge the idea that anything follows from a contradiction.
Right.
Relevance logic insists that the premises of an argument must be relevant to the conclusion for the argument to be valid.
Good.
It rejects the classical notion that a contradiction trivializes an entire system.
Which, let's be honest, always felt a bit strange to me as a philosopher.
Right.
It never sat well that a single contradiction could derail an entire philosophical system.
Relevance logic tries to address this concern by demanding a tighter connection between premises and conclusions.
Yeah.
It aims to capture a more intuitive notion of logical consequence.
Mhm.
Paraconsistency, on the other hand, takes a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
It allows for the possibility that some contradictions might actually be true.
Whoa, true contradictions.
Yay!
That sounds like a recipe for philosophical chaos.
It's certainly a radical idea, known as dialetheism.
Okay.
But for some philosophers, it's a way to deal with paradoxes and inconsistencies that classical logic struggles to handle. For example, the liar paradox, this statement is false,
Right.
creates a contradiction in classical logic.
Yeah.
A paraconsistent logic might offer a way to analyze such paradoxes without the entire system collapsing.
So if I'm working on a problem that involves paradoxes like the nature of self-reference or the limits of language,
Right.
classical logic might lead me down a rabbit hole of contradictions,
Right.
while a paraconsistent logic might offer a way out.
That's the hope. Paraconsistency opens up new avenues for exploring the nature of truth and contradiction,
Yeah.
especially in areas where classical logic seems to stumble.
Okay.
It allows us to grapple with inconsistencies without abandoning the project of logical reasoning altogether.
This has been an incredible journey.
Yeah.
We've gone from the basic building blocks of classical logic all the way to like the frontiers of philosophical thought, exploring alternative systems that challenge our very notions of truth, proof, and validity.
And that's what's so exciting about logic. It's not just a dry technical system.
Yeah.
It's a vibrant field that's constantly evolving and pushing the boundaries of our understanding.
Yeah.
This deep dive has given you a taste of its power and complexity, but it's just the beginning.
So what's the takeaway for you, our philosophically inclined listener? If classical logic isn't the be-all and end-all, how should you approach the vast landscape of philosophical inquiry?
That's the question you'll have to grapple with. Perhaps this deep dive has inspired you to explore alternative logical systems, to seek out new tools for tackling those thorny philosophical problems.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's made you appreciate the elegance and power of classical logic
Right.
while recognizing its limits.
Yeah.
Either way, this journey into the heart of logic has hopefully given you a new perspective on the very nature of philosophical reasoning.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll leave you with one final provocative thought to ponder.
Mm-hmm.
If even logic itself has limits,
Right,
what does that tell us about the boundless realm of philosophical inquiry?
right.
Until next time, keep diving deep.